So here are my basic hand binding tools. A pin cushion to hold my needle. I use a milliner size 10 straw needle, nice and sharp and thin so that it glides through the fabric. Pair of scissors to snip your threads. Right now I'm actually using a 40 weight Aurifil cotton thread. It's a little bit thicker than a 50 weight, which blends in a little bit better. But I actually kind of like the boldness of the stitch, so I don't mind the 40 weight. A thimble. You don't need something this heavy duty. I've got a lighter one, but sometimes going through the corners especially, I find this one works quite well. And then you'll want a thread conditioner. This is optional, but I do find that it helps. Don't mind the messiness of it. I find that it helps your thread glide through all the layers of fabric, and it does help prevent some tangling. And a little goes a long way. Like I've had this one for a couple of years now, and you can see I haven't really put that much of a dent into it. And that's it. Those are my basic essentials for hand binding. So let's get started. So the first step is obviously you're going to want to take some thread. Normally I go about the length of my my hand to my elbow. You don't want it too long because then you're just going to end up with a bunch of tangles, and that won't be fun, and you're also pulling through more thread at once. But you don't want it too short because then you're just going to be stopping and starting more frequently, and that's never fun either. So here I'm just running the thread through the thread gloss to condition it, and then I pass my fingers along it just to smooth out the conditioning thread. And then at one end I'm going to tie a knot. You can tie the knot however you like. I just tend to roll it around my finger and then roll it off, and I do that a couple of times. You don't need it to be fancy. It's going to be hidden, but you do want it to stay put. So a decent size knot, and then I'm just going to thread my needle. There we go, and we're set to start hand binding. So let me get the quilt, and we'll get started. So at this point, I've already ironed my binding back, and I've attached it with some binder clips just to keep it in place. You certainly don't have to. You can leave it free flowing. I just find that it helps keep everything in order. I find it easier. So you'll see I've already started doing some stitches here, and I'll show you how to continue on. So grab your needle. And then what I do is I lift this up a little bit and place my needle between the two layers of binding fabric. Now what you're looking to do, I'm trying to do this so that you can see. So basically I'm going in through one layer, and then I'm going to travel. My needle's going to travel until I come out along the edge here. So you can see I've gone in through here on the back. You can't see my needle on the front. I've certainly not gone all the way to the front. And I'm coming out right on that edge. So this is the edge that I'm talking about, the folded edge of your binding. My needle is coming out right along that edge. And then I'm just going to pull through. Now that buries my knot right in, so you can see my knot is buried right in there. And now I'm ready to start taking my stitches. So I'm just gonna move this around a little bit so you can see it better. Now you can go left or right, so I'm talking about the direction in which you stitch. That really comes back to preference and comfort. I've tried it both ways. I can do both ways, but I find I work better when I'm working towards the right. And I tend to position the quilt so that I have it running perpendicular to me. That's just, I find that the most comfortable. So with my left hand, I hold the binding in place. So I'm not pulling it, but I do want it to be nice and flush with the edge of the raw edge of the quilt, right? So I don't want this to be too loose between the binding and the edge of the quilt. So I like to use my thumb to kind of hold it in place and make sure I've got it nice and flush. Then with my right hand, because I'm right-handed, I then go straight in. So where I came out, oh, I pulled it out, hang on a second. So where I came out when I originally put the needle through on that edge, I want to go right down, straight down, and then travel through the top layer, through the batting, without going through the front of the quilt, and take that stitch and pull through. Now the tricky part is you really do want to go straight down, not at an angle, because then your stitches will be on a slant and they'll be more noticeable. But if you go straight down, the stitch runs parallel, so that, or perpendicular to that, so it ends up being more hidden, a little bit blinder, right? So again, you just go straight down, travel through the top layer, through the batting, and then you're coming back out again as close as possible along that edge, and then pull through. And you're just going to continue doing this the whole way. Now, when you run out of thread, when you run out of thread, what you're going to do is you're going to want to leave enough distance for yourself so that you have enough room to maneuver. So what you're going to do is wrap the thread around your finger and then pull the needle through. So you've got it looped. I use the tip of the needle to go through that hoop, that loop that you created, and then I pull with my left hand while holding my right hand down to position that knot, using the tip of the needle to pull it down to where I want it to be secured. So that's one knot that I've secured. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to wrap it around my finger. I'm going to pass the needle through. So I've got my loop. And then I'm going to again use the tip of my needle to come down and bring the knot right down to where I need it to be. And then you don't want to tug too hard because you will break your threads, and that leaves your knot exposed. And then going back in exactly where I came out, which is a little fiddly, and you will get used to this. And it doesn't have to be exact, but you're trying to, as much as possible, go into the hole that you came out of. And then you want to travel, again, you want to make sure that you're not going through the front. You're just looking to go through the batting. And then pull it all the way through. And then if you heard that little pop, that means the knot has been buried within that binding for a nice seamless finish. And then you can just take your snips and trim your threads. So I'm going to continue on until I get to a corner, and then I'll come back and show you how to do a corner. Okay, so I'm at the corner, and what I want to show you is how I pre-fold these areas, these corners. So you've got your binding that you're folding over, and what I like to do is make sure that this corner here, the inside corner, is nice and flush with the edge of your quilt. So I really want to make sure that this first bit is nice and flush, and then with my nail I kind of run it along that edge and then pull with my left hand, so that I get this under piece is nice and tucked all the way into that corner, and then this one folds right over. So they're both nice and flush with either edge of the quilt. And then I tack that in place just so that it doesn't go anywhere. And so here's my needle. This is, I've been taking some stitches coming up. Now once I'm here, I'm going to go down, I'm going to come in, Hang on, I need to take one more stitch. So then I go right down, but what I'm looking to do here is come out. So I'm going to move this now so that you can hopefully see this better. So what I've done is I've gone through the bottom binding, and I'm trying to come out towards that corner there of the top binding fold, and then pull through. And that will tack that bit down. Now some people leave these corners open, they'll just continue on. I like to stitch up this fold so that it really stays nice and secure. So how I do that is same process, go straight down, and then here I'm coming through a few more layers. So I'm still not going through the front, but I am going through this bottom binding, and then I'm coming through the edge of this fold here. So I'm securing all of those layers in place. And this is where I find this thicker thimble comes in handy, because I'm going through quite a few layers, and so it needs a little bit more of a tug to get it all through. So again, I'll take only a few. I don't, you don't have to go all the way up, but I take 2 or 3 stitches. Oh, hang on a second. So sometimes, this is a good example, sometimes your threads will still get knotted, but I find that if you deal with it before you start pulling on it, it's usually just a little bit of a tangle and not a full-on knot. But if you pull, that's where it will become a full-on knot, and you'll have to cut and unpick and redo everything. So when you feel that something is tangled, try not to tug on it too quickly, and take a look at it and see if you can't untangle it before it gets fully knotted. And so once I've gone up that edge, I'm actually going to come back through, I'm going to put my needle back through that spot where I came out. So let me see if I can do this so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to come, oops. So I'm trying to come back through that spot. So I'm trying to come back through that spot where I come out, and then I'm going to travel through those layers, trying to get my needle to come out at the tip here. So I'm going through that binding layer. I'm still, again, not going through the front here, and then push through. And then, so you can see how that's tacked down, but you don't actually see any stitches, or hardly any. And then we're just gonna continue on this way. And that's it. That's pretty much how I do my hand binding. I will say this, the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's really a thing of practice. But I do find that it results in a really seamless finish. You can see the front is nicely, there's no visible stitching, and on the back, very minimal stitches are viewed. Just note that you want to match your thread to your binding and not to your backing. If I had used the charcoal thread, you would have definitely seen more of those stitches, but because I'm using a pink, it blends quite nicely in. And you can still see some, but it's not nearly as visible as if you were doing machine binding. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below.